OUR is here to regulate the operation. If you want to light and power your internet and phone, the OUR is here to get you to know your rights.
The OUR is here to regulate how the public utilities operate. Water, light, phone and internet. The OUR keep them in check.
Contact us at 1-888-CALL-OUR, the Office of Utilities Regulation. OUR, regulating utilities for the benefit of all.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining the Office of Utilities Regulation, the OUR, for its latest webinar. This afternoon, we'll be looking at the issue of the OUR's decision on financing NWC's capital projects. How will you, the customer, benefit? My name is Elizabeth Bennett Marsh. I'm the Public Education Specialist at the Office of Utilities Regulation. The OUR recently published its determination notice on the NWC's tariff application, which was submitted in 2018. Based on convention, the OUR usually sets the NWC's tariff on a 5-year review cycle. However, due to insufficient information provided by the NWC, the regulator instead decided on a 2-year interim tariff. Nevertheless, some significant decisions were made. One of the most significant is financing capital projects and how you, the customers, stand to benefit from this. To tell us more about this and other decisions made by the OUR are my esteemed panel this afternoon. So I have our Director General at the OUR, Ansel Hewitt. Ansel, welcome.
Thanks, Liz.
And we also have our Manager for Regulation and Policy for the electricity and water and sewage sectors, Winston Robotham. Welcome,
Liz,
Winston.
thanks for having me this afternoon.
Thank you. So, DG, let's start with you. Can you give us a breakdown of the review process and some of the decisions that was made by the OUR with regards to the NWC's tariff?
Thanks, Liz. And good afternoon to everyone. And we thank you for watching this broadcast, for taking the time to learn about the major decisions arising from the OUR's deliberation on the NWC 2019-2021 tariff application. The review of NWC's application has been extended and iterative. So first, I'd like to quickly explain the process and why it has taken so long. NWC's previous rate extended from October 1, 2013 to September 30, 2018. So we expected them to submit their tariff application last June. Submission by that time should have allowed sufficient time for the required regulatory assessment and all other things being equal for the implementation of new rates on October 1, 2018. That did not happen. NWC actually submitted its application on 2nd of October 2018 and requested a 3-year tariff schedule. The data provided, however, was inadequate to support the application, and it subsequently became clear to the OUR that it would not have had enough information to inform even a 3-year tariff. In the circumstances, the OUR sought information from the NWC that would support at least a 2-year or a 24-month tariff review. Even so, it took the NWC some time to give us satisfactory information. This led the OUR to stop the clock on processing the application in December 2018. NWC was given up until January 30th, 2019 to provide all the critical data OUR had requested, at which point the OUR recommenced its processing of the application. Subsequently, the NWC also requested more time to amend their application and make a further submission, particularly so that the tariff determination could put the company in a better place to attend to some of the difficulties that had emerged with the coincidence of the ongoing infrastructure work and the prolonged period of drought. As a result, OUR's decision was further delayed. The regulator has approached this analysis and decision-making process on the basis that the utility is to be permitted to continue to address a number of shortcomings in order to enhance the quality of service to its customers across the nation. We have now approved an interim 24-month tariff rather than a complete 5-year tariff, as has happened in the past. As previously indicated, that decision reflects the fact that information provided by the NWC is inadequate to allow for a longer tariff period. The interim rate structure is intended to ensure that the NWC can continue to finance its operations even while undertaking the critical studies and financial and economic analyses to support the forthcoming substantive tariff review. The OUR reviewed the NWC's revenue requirement, and our analysis suggests that it should be increased to 31.3 billion instead of the 33.9 billion proposed by the NWC. Of this amount, 24.3 billion is for potable water services and 7 billion is for sewage services. This represents an overall increase of 16% in revenue requirements compared with the 26.2% increase that was requested by the NWC. Moving on to the major issues, which I know everyone is listening for. The effect of the OUR's decision is that there is an overall increase in water rates. To give you an idea of the scale of the increase, I have provided a slide showing the possible bill impact. For residential customers who use about 3,000 imperial gallons, their bill might move by about 4.3%. Commercial customers using close to 16,000 imperial gallons should expect a similar increase. Customers who pay both water and sewage rates combined will, however, experience higher percentage adjustments. So in real terms, residential users who are connected to a sewer system would likely see their combined overall bill moving upward by about 16.6%. For commercial customers connected to NWC's sewer system, their overall bill should increase by about 17.8%. The change in rates aside, there are many other aspects to the OUR's decision that are worth underscoring. Here are a few key points to note. This is an interim 24-month tariff, so we expect NWC to apply in mid-2021 for a full review supported by the more detailed information we have enunciated earlier. The early payment rebate, late payment fee initiative has been continued. Rates have been consolidated into 4 consumption categories, down from 6, but not the 3 blocks the NWC had advocated. The proposal for commercial customers to have a declining block structure is approved. We approved a standby charge for major commercial customers. The price adjustment mechanism, which takes account of short-term inflation, has been retained. The existing guaranteed standard scheme has been retained without any adjustment at this point. There will be a full assessment of guaranteed standard next time, and incidentally, the OUR will also be reviewing the approach to guaranteed standards in its next fiscal year work plan, so that initiative will benefit the next review. The K-factor charge has been increased from 16 to 20%. Winston will take you through this segment to explain briefly what this means, as well as to help you to understand how this will benefit you. Over to you, Winston.
Thank you, Director General, Mr. Hewitt. And you mentioned briefly about this K-factor, which I'm certain that our listeners want to hear much more about. May not be as brief, but of course we have a few minutes to do so. But of course, the K-factor, why did the OUR put this K-factor on the customer's bill? People are asking this question. It goes back all the way to 2008 when the OUR saw the need to assist the National Water Commission. They were severely hampered by infrastructure deficiencies and inadequate resources. And so the OER saw the need to assist in this regard, because if you don't have the infrastructure in place, then the water will not get to the customers. And so you mentioned, Director General, that it has increased, the amount that the consumers will actually pay. And this has increased from 16% to 20%. And of course, you'll see that reflecting on your bill in January of next year, 2020. So what is this K-factor? What is it really for? It's to assist with capital-intensive programs that the National Water Commission is embarking on. And it costs a lot of money to get the water to the end user. And so the NWC will be assisted to replace mains, to expand the sewer network. And there's a expansion program going on now in the Kingston and St. Andrew area. And most importantly, the non-revenue water activities and some capital rehabilitation programs such as the wastewater treatment plants, and to strategically expand the wastewater collection network to facilitate increased usage of the Soapberry wastewater treatment plant in St. Catherine. So that's some of what the K-factor that the consumers are asked to pay for will go towards putting in this kind of an infrastructure. So what are we doing to date with this K-factor that was put in place since 2008? The OER approved 23 projects that have not yet commenced, and the NWC has proposed an additional 22 new projects that should go for the next 5 years. But of course, they need more. And so there's a further proposal. And I'll tell a little more later on in the presentation as to why this additional proposal. But suffice it to say that the NWC, they have a non-revenue water project now underway, soon to be completed next year, with the MEA consultants. They are from Europe. They are, expert in the non-revenue water business, and so they have engaged, the National Water Commission engaged the MEA to assist with this program. It's a co-management program. And NWC is saying, hey, this project needs to be continued. And so they have requested that the MEA people assist with the St. Catherine project in Portmore. The NWC is also looking to use the K-factor fund to implement projects to more accurately determine baseline data for NRW, non-revenue water, because we need to know exactly how much is it that the NWC is really losing. And so they will be doing some census mapping, water supply network monitoring program, production metering project, customer information system upgrade, among other things. They are looking at replacement of transmission mains in Kingston and St. Andrew, and they're targeting the 3 miles along the Spanish Town Road to Glenmore Road, that section, and the Stanton Terrace to Morisco Road, 6 miles along the Washington Boulevard to Dunrobin, Constant Spring. And they're saying that's what they need this money for, to additional increase. And so they had requested the Office of Utilities Regulation to assist further. And so those are some of the considerations that went into decision making to increase this K factor from 16% to 20%. Why 20%? Well, they did present to us the project plans and say, hey, it will cost in the region of $2.6 million to service the debt that they would require to put that infrastructure in place. And that translated to that 4% incremental increase in the K-factor amount. And how the K-factor really works, it's not that the consumers are asked to pay this money and the NWC take this money and go and buy the infrastructure. No, it's actually used as a leverage. So the NWC will say, hey, if my loan is $10 million US, for instance, and it's over 10 years, then I'm required to pay, say without interest, $1 million per year. So if in fact the consumers can pay that $1 million, then they'll take that assurance to the bank, and the bank will use that as a leverage to say, all right, I can lend you $10 million and that $1 million that you will get as flows from the K factor. So what are the results to date? Well, of course, we know that a lot of water is going to waste. Those leaks need to be plugged. And we have the rolling 12-month average for 2015 stood at around 59% non-revenue water. And since 2019, around May, we did some checks and we recognized that it came down by approximately 11% to 48%. And at the point in time, the 12-month average in that particular month was 43%. And so we use that to use as a gauge. It's the poster child for to say, DG, that we consider that, yes, it is really working. And there are other measures that we looked at. And there is the liters per connection. How much revenue they are losing. Where is the non-revenue water in terms of the liters per connection per day? And there's an average rolling 12-month figure that we looked at over the 5-year period from 2008 to 2013, and then across from 2013, since the last tariff review, to see how they were doing. And we see where it was trending down. And the numbers here you can see on our display is showing that a baseline was set in 2016, August, and the NWC was losing 1,040 liters per connection per day on average over a 12-month period. And it came down significantly in 2018, December, to 789 liters. And that was a 24% reduction in terms of the amount of liters per connection per day. And where is it at today? We got some numbers yesterday from the NWC, and they're showing that it is already down further because it's now at 600 liters per connection per day, a 42% reduction in the Kingston and metropolitan area. And so we think that the MIA project is one that maybe could work in other parishes. And that's why we looked at it and say, hey, they should hasten this project in the Portmore area in St. Catherine, because a lot of water is going to waste in that area too. And how will this benefit you, the customer? All right, and what is it that the OER will do to ensure that the benefits should come? Because far too often we hear NWC making these pronouncements and get nothing done. And this time around, we hope to hold their foot to the wheel. And so the NWC is asked to revise the slate of projects that they are to come to the OER with, because we want them to tighten up to ensure that that 4% reduction will translate, and the amount of money that they say they want to spend. And so they should come back to us by the 8th of March next year with that revised slate of projects and the detailed project schedules for each selected project, with justification for the priority and the logic to the sequencing of those projects. So we need to meticulously look at what is going to be done. And a description of the key performance indicators that NWC will use in its data capture and the strategy it will employ to improve the data retrieval, because data is important to actually measure what is going on. And they need to evidence that they have established a management unit, a project management unit, because it cannot be business as usual, because we want efficiency. We want the management of this project to be pinpoint. And so they need to establish a project management unit for this particular project. And the strategy for capacity building and the knowledge transfer in relation to the engineering and administrative skills that are to be associated with the NRW, because it's a technical area. And of course, that's what MIA people brings to the table. And we hope that that knowledge will be transferred to NWC in the process. Failure to do all of this, we are going to roll back this 20%, because we do not want the consumers to continue to pay and not getting the desired results. So if they do not present that information by the 8th of March, come the 8th of June, viewers, look out. We are going to reverse, but we hope not to, because we need to get the non-revenue water down. So we are going, in fact, come next week, we are going to be meeting again with the NWC to discuss how they will actually get to presenting that information to us. Please.
Thank you very much, Winston. I want to probe a bit more on your last slide because you started to talk about it, but I wanted to delve a bit more into exactly how will the headway being made under the NRW program benefit customers tangibly. If the person who is listening to me now, they're in their offices, they're at home, they're doing their work, etc. They want to know what's in it for me. How is all of this grand plan going to redound to my benefit?
Thanks, Liz. And it's an interesting question because people hear about NRW and they're going to be doing all this. But what am I going to get for it? Well, of course, if you paid attention to those numbers as it relates to the liters per connection per day that NWC was losing up there in 2015, 1,040 liters per customer connection per day. Well, if you reduce that amount, cut that even in half, to 500 liters connection, you have half of that amount of water that NWC will have in its reserves. In its, the Mona Dam will not go down so quickly because you're not losing it. In fact, it's costing them less to pump all of that water that is going to waste. So we need to ensure that, hey, we have to arrest non-revenue water. So we'll get that water now to areas that are not yet served by water because you have more water, you have less cost now to pump that water, you have more resources that will be retained. And so some areas that are not served will be served. But of course, people want lower prices too, but in the long run, and hopefully we hope to get real prices down. You may not get the nominal prices down, but effectively, if efficiency improves, we hope that it will translate to
consistency in the
prices.
supply of the precious commodity. We should start seeing that benefit.
Of course, of course.
Winston, when we talk about projects under the NRW, what kind of projects are we talking about exactly?
Well,
I know I'm putting you under the gun.
Yes, but these projects, we mentioned get down the NRW and they'll be doing some stuff, but what exactly is it that they are going to be doing? I think that's the question you're asking, Liz. And I tell you about fixing leaks. It's interesting that, you know, a lot of people sit in the boardroom and you ask, so yeah, you bring down and you come with some fancy stuff, but it's simply fixing those leaks, you know. Just simply fixing them. How do you fix the leaks? Not the whole way you do things, just get some, you call it, not the Patex, that DJ, you put that tangent on the thing, you know. No, it's not putting it, it's getting, you know, good infrastructure in place. And so you have infrastructure now that have good quality, that the NWC needs to procure, and they need to get staff well trained so they can find where those leaks are. And so you need trained staff who can actually go to listen for those leaks, and they must be supervised. So that's why NWC even need that team of people. And you need also to install loggers. These loggers you can use to measure and collect flow and pressure data. You need to also put advanced leak detection in place and you have geographic references of these leaks so that you can transmit this information into the NWC source center where they can actually map and collect the data so that you can approach this methodologically. And so, yes, there's a strategy to all of this and the methodology of such that it requires some resources, and we are going to fund those resources.
And of course, the OUR will be monitoring it as you go along. As you said, we'll be holding them to strict accountability.
Oh, certainly we will.
If you're joining us, welcome. This is the OUR's latest webinar. We're discussing the OUR's decision on the NWC's financing of its capital projects and how customers will benefit. I'm been joined by the OUR's Director General, Ansard Hewitt, and of course, the Manager for Regulation and Enforcement for Water, Sewage, and the Electricity sectors, Winston Robotham. Answered, going back to your presentation where you talked about the decisions that we made, one of the observations from members of the public is why at this time did we grant them an increase? And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what are some of the factors that go into our considerations when we get tariff applications such as the NWC's.
Right. So what are some of the factors that we consider? Clearly, I've enumerated some matters of efficiency, the ability to recover cost, and clearly what we need is a utility that continues to operate. So our aim is to keep the utility operating because it is imperative that when customers are able to get water. So one of the considerations with this particular application And you will notice that even though it did not have sufficient information, that we have granted this interim tariff because it recognizes that the company needs to keep operating. It needs to meet its obligations. And there is no point in shutting down the utility because that's what you do then is exacerbate the problem. So that would have been a major consideration in keeping the operations going so that there's water in the pipe. And at the same time, we're insisting that you need to fix those problems that are currently causing quite a great deal of discomfort to customers and a great deal of hardship, really.
One of the questions that also came to us, and if you can, and we have a few minutes left, but you can WhatsApp your questions to us at 876-316-2647. That's 876-316-2647. Answered. We rejected the JPS's tariff application because of lack of certain vital information that we wanted. We also made a similar observation with the NWCs, but nevertheless, we gave them, we made certain decisions based on their application. What was the difference between the two applications? What made it different?
Right. So, two really different regulatory framework. The JPS has a license, and the Electricity Act as well governs the JPS. There are clear prescriptions within the JPS's license as to how a tariff review is to be conducted and set time frames. So when we get an application from JPS, we have a set time in which to decide whether there is sufficient information to process the application and indeed to ask for further information. Those timelines are strict and the JPS can insist on them. And our part, we have to ensure that we have enough information to do the kind of due diligence so that we don't end up with a decision that is flawed or is not supported by sufficient information and that we comply with the timeline. So that was the risk where the JPS's application was concerned, and having looked at it, we decided that we didn't have the information to process the application within the prescribed timelines, and therefore we took the decision that we would send it back and ask the JPS essentially to resubmit, which is what we're expecting them to do. With regard to the NWC, clearly there is that is not defined, and so the process does allow us to continue to engage with NWC. And you will have seen that, as I have indicated, that at one point we stopped the clock and we said we're not processing the application until you provide us with further information. And we have taken the time to do that, and we have also taken the time to say the decision that it is prudent to allow an interim tariff and to give them sufficient time to get the substantive information that will allow us to do a more rigorous review, especially since that tariff is going to be for a longer period. And so the potential for harm to consumers, or probably the NWC itself, of mistakes in a longer tariff is greater.
I have a question coming in on our WhatsApp line. Again, our WhatsApp number is 876-316-2647. I'll throw this to Winston from a viewer. Will this tariff help NRW?
Oh, certainly. As we had explained, they're getting more money in terms of the increase of the K factor from 16% to 20%. And we know that, yes, the K factor is working. In fact, the people in Portmore will tell you that they're no longer, suffering from the stench coming from those sewage treatment plants because the K factor money went towards improving or, in fact, getting rid of those treatment plants. And there are now pumping stations that have replaced those plants in the independent city area: Bridgeport, Hamilton Gardens, Caymanas Garden, Portmore Villas. In those areas, NWC, they have replaced those treatment plants with pumping stations, and so the sewage is now being pumped to Soapberry. And so, yes, NRW will also come down, but of course the K factor increase is going into areas such as those mentioned for sewage treatment. that we think that, yes, K-factor is working in and of itself.
And of course, we will continue to keep the public updated as to the progress being made under this, because it's in everybody's best interest, eh?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I think that's where we have to leave it. Ansel Hewitt is our Director General at the Office of Utilities Regulation. Winston Robotham is the Manager for Regulation and Enforcement for the electricity and water and sewage sectors. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, because you consider this important enough for you to watch. We want to thank you very much. My name is Elizabeth Bennett Marsh. I would like to also recognize our producer, the hardworking Gordon Brown, and our Director of Public Consumer and Public Affairs, Yvonne Nicholson, for her continued support. Good afternoon.
The OUR is here to regulate the operation. If you want to light and power your internet and phone, the OUR is here to get you to know your rights.
The OUR is here to regulate how the public utilities operate. Water, light, phone and internet. The OUR keep them in check.
Contact us at 1-888-CALL-OUR, the Office of Utilities Regulation. OUR, regulating utilities for the benefit of all.